Hey, class, welcome. Hope you guys all enjoyed your Thanksgiving break. It's good to be back with you guys. We're gonna get started. I'm gonna see if anybody is gonna join the stream. I do have some Christmas music going on in the background to get us ready for Christmas. It's crazy, we only have 3 weeks until Christmas break. So let's do whatever we need to do to stay on top. Some of you guys are doing an awesome job of staying on top of your work, and a few of you guys are just behind, and that's fine, but we need to get you caught up. All right, so make sure you put away the things that distract you, the things that pull you away from getting your schoolwork done. That could be watching too much TV, playing too many games, or sleeping in too long. Whatever it is that is holding you back from getting your schoolwork done, please set that aside and be disciplined and set a schedule to get caught up. All right, some of you guys didn't pass the first quarter, and actually that's okay. What you just need to do is you need to get caught up in math and literacy from quarter one, and then the other subjects, literature, history, and science, all you got to do is pass this quarter and the next two, so 3 out of the 4, and you can pass all of 4th grade. So please do what you need to do to get caught up. All right, and then so we are going to get into history. So before we dive in, let's review what we learned in chapter 15. Okay, just give me a sec. I'm gonna pull up my notes really quick to make sure I give you all the information that you need to be successful on your unit assessment, and then obviously to learn everything that we have to teach you here at Hozho, here in 4th grade. Okay, so chapter 15, we learned about Thomas Becket. Remember? And the big question for chapter 15 is, why did Henry II regret the words he spoke about Thomas Becket? Remember, Thomas Becket was one of the advisors and then ended up being the archbishop. And they ended up they were best friends, but then they ended up kind of having a quarrel or a fight amongst one another. And so Henry II talked about, this was the quote. It said, open quote, this is what King Henry said: "Will no one rid me of this upstart priest," referring to Thomas Becket. And later, Thomas Becket ended up dying because some of the king's knights who were a little hot-headed or impulsive ended up taking those words to heart that the king said and ended up killing Thomas Becket. And so that's why King Henry regretted those words. He was just a little upset in the moment and spoke some words that he didn't really mean, but his knights thought he meant those words, and so they took it to heart. So that's a little bit of what we read last time. Chapter 16, the big question, let's call attention to that really quick, is why do you think the author describes Eleanor as extraordinary? So that's what we're gonna be looking for as we go through chapter 16. Look for answers to why we think the author describes Eleanor as extraordinary. So in this chapter, we're going to learn a little bit more about the role of women in the medieval times. We learned about Hildegard of Bingen earlier. And let's think, did women generally have more power than men, or do you think men had more power than women in the medieval times? Well, those that are saying men had more power, that's correct. There was a social status with men, and men were able to own lands. Only men were able to go to universities to learn and study. So we've explored the concept of power in the terms of social status, educational opportunities, and the amount of land or money a person has. So in this lesson, we will learn about a woman who was extraordinary in the amount of power she had. and also how she was extraordinary in many other ways. And that will help us answer the big question. Okay, so let me pause this music to get us focused. And let's dive into chapter 16, Eleanor of Aquitaine. Okay. All right. Queen of France. Eleanor of Aquitaine right here is how you pronounce it, was an extraordinary woman, especially in an age when women had very little power. Right? But it was just kind of refreshing our memory why women had less power. She was beautiful, charming, and intelligent, and came from a powerful family. She could read and write. Sorry. Unusual for women in the 1100s. Played the harp and ride a horse as well as any man. So there's a few ways that made Eleanor a little bit different than the normal woman back in the medieval ages. But the most important thing that Eleanor had was land. She was the Duchess of Aquitaine. So let's pause really quick before we finish that sentence and learn what our first vocabulary word is. And that is Duchess. And remember that each chapter you have one of your assignments. So both your assignments are to answer the big question and to fill out the vocabulary words. And I've said this multiple times, make sure you are using the definitions from the book. You can find the definitions to the vocabulary words in each chapter or at the end of the book or at the end of your PDF. Those that are obviously looking online to find the definitions. Please use the definitions from the book. That way I know that you are actually getting in the book. Please do not Google the vocabulary word and copy and paste a Google definition. Please use the definition from the book. So reading the definition from here, it says a duchess is a female noble who is the wife or widow of a duke or who rules a small territory herself. So she was a duchess, so she ruled a small territory herself, or was a wife, or maybe she was a widow, we'll learn, of a duke. So she was the Duchess of Aquitaine, one of the largest and richest regions of what is now France. Aquitaine was a region rich in rivers. Its name came from the Roman word for land of waters. It also had olive groves, vineyards, wheat fields, orchards, and forests. So a lot of good resources to be wealthy and to be self-reliant and self-sufficient, things that we've learned about, to live on their own. It's a very fruitful land. So let's look at this picture, and I'll scroll out a little bit to better get a picture of a look at the whole picture. And let's read this caption together. What does it say? It says, Eleanor of Aquitaine married Louis, or maybe it's pronounced Louis, the son of the King of France, when she was 15. Can some of you ladies imagine being married in 5 or 6 years? That would be pretty wild, huh? Kind of a crazy fact, my mother was married when she was 17, so just 2 years after 15, so she was pretty young too. Okay. As Duchess, she was a vassal of the King of France, but she controlled more land than he did. Still, she had to do what the king said. Remember, a vassal is someone who pledges their loyalty to a higher lord or king. So she was a vassal to the King of France, but she had more land than the King of France did. Still, she had to do what the king said, right? Because she pledged her loyalty. So when the king told the 15-year-old Eleanor that she was going to marry Louis, his 16-year-old son, whom she had never met, she didn't question it. Eleanor had always known that she would marry a young nobleman someday and that her marriage would be based on land rather than love. Shortly after her marriage, the old king died, and Louis became King of France. Eleanor became the queen. Can you imagine being, so it said shortly after, so just maybe a couple years, being the queen at such a young age? At first, the two teenagers got quite got along quite well, but disappointment followed. Eleanor gave birth to 2 girls instead of the son the king needed to follow him on the throne. Eleanor hated the royal castle in Paris. It was cold and dreary. She missed sunny Aquitaine. Louis was not as bold and dashing as Eleanor's father and grandfather had been. To make things worse, Louis got more and more interested in religion. Was she looking around for a new husband? No one really knows for sure, but one day a young nobleman named Henry came to Paris. All right, so who was Eleanor and why was she called Eleanor of Aquitaine? Remember? So if she is a wife or was married to a duke, she would be called what? A duchess. So Eleanor was the duchess of a region in France called Aquitaine. That's why she was called Eleanor of Aquitaine. So after she was the duchess, Eleanor became the queen of France. How did this happen? How did Eleanor become the queen? Well, she was required, or she was asked to marry the king of France at the time. The king of France's son, Louis, and then the old king died, and so Louis became the new king, so Eleanor became the queen. All right. Okay, so let's learn how this marriage came to an end. All right, that's our next question. How did this marriage come to an end? And this section is labeled The End of a Royal Marriage. Oh no! Okay, you've met Henry before. The young man Eleanor met was the same handsome, energetic, and charming man who later became Henry II. When Eleanor first met him, he wasn't yet King of England. He was Henry of Anjou, and he controlled the lands north of Aquitaine. Eleanor's husband, the King of France, saw Henry as his chief rival for power. Little did he know how much of a rival Henry would become. Shortly after she had met Henry, Eleanor asked for annulment. All right, so let's pause really quick and learn what annulment means. To annul means to cancel, to make no longer legal or true. So she asked for an annulment or a cancellation of her marriage to Louis. So she didn't want to be married to King Louis anymore. So although King Louis was sad that she wanted to end the marriage, their failure to produce a son was a serious issue. The religious king wondered whether the failure was a sign of God's displeasure, as Eleanor claimed. After 15 years of marriage, the marriage was annulled, and Louis and Eleanor went their separate ways. So Eleanor got married when she was 15, and they got annulled when she was, what's 15 plus 15? 30. Good job, guys. So after 15 years, when Eleanor was 30, they got separated. Eleanor returned to Aquitaine. Even if she had wanted to remain unmarried for a while, Eleanor soon saw that it was impossible. Eleanor needed the protection of a husband. Okay, so how did this marriage come to an end? So we learned that Eleanor was not really happy with the life in Paris. She didn't like the castle in Paris. King Louis was also upset that Eleanor bore 2 daughters instead of a son who could carry on the throne. We've learned that the throne was usually, the power in the throne was usually passed on to, family members. And so without having a son, there wouldn't be a king. And so King Louis also thought that them not bearing Eleanor not bearing a son was a sign of God's displeasure for this marriage, and so their marriage was annulled or canceled, and they went their separate ways. Okay. Our next section, Queen of England. No one knows for sure when or how Henry and Eleanor agreed to marry or who made the first proposal. Yet 2 months after the annulment of her marriage to Louis, Eleanor and Henry were married. Okay, so proposal is an offer of marriage. So we're not for sure of when or how Henry and Eleanor agreed to marry or who made the first proposal, but in 2 months' time, after Eleanor was no longer married to King Louis, she was married with Henry. So these two were far better suited to each other than Eleanor and Louis had been. Henry and Eleanor were both intelligent, bold, and spirited people who admired learning, literature, and power. There's a lot of good common ground. In the first 13 years of their marriage, Henry and Eleanor had 8 children, including 5 sons. Wow. There's 7 kids in my family, and it is a lot. So having 8 would be a lot. Together, they were the most powerful couple in Europe. Their lands and wealth ensured the support of powerful nobles. Henry had the knights, ships, and power he needed to sail across the Channel and claim the throne of England. For 14 years, Henry and Eleanor ruled together over their kingdom, which stretched from Scotland to Spain. Okay, so let's pause really quick and look at this awesome map here on the right. And we can see, using our map key, Henry's and Eleanor's lands. Okay, so all of this green going from England to Ireland, up to Scotland, down to Normandy, Aquitaine right here. You can see where Eleanor was from, almost all the way down to Spain and France. And then right here, this little purple is the Kingdom of France. Okay, so look at the map to see what lands they controlled, and that's what we just did. Awesome, huh? Okay, so sadly, this marriage began to fail. Oh no! Eleanor returned to Aquitaine with her children. It wasn't long before some of her sons were teenagers. The young sons were impatient for power of their own. Henry gave them titles but no power. Eleanor encouraged her sons to think about the day when they could oppose their father. Meanwhile, Eleanor held court in Aquitaine. What does held court mean, or hold court? Well, this is an idiom or a phrase, which means, let's look here to the right and read it with me. Be the center of attention, be surrounded by people who want to talk, listen, and entertain. So Eleanor was talking, listening, and entertaining people in Aquitaine. She hired the best poets and troubadours to entertain her and her children. She favored stories of courtly love in which brave young knights performed feats of courage for the ladies. Kind of like King Arthur, a little bit about Robin Hood, right? Not that Robin Hood is a knight, but performing feats of courage for Maid Marian, right? She encouraged her sons to be brave and dashing. She also encouraged interesting and witty conversation. So bright, like clever conversation. Her court was considered to be the most civilized place in Europe. Okay, so we just learned that Eleanor and Henry had a good marriage for over 10 years, but then their marriage also kind of fell apart. So Eleanor left to go back where? To Aquitaine. She took her children with them. Her children wanted to get power. Their father, King Henry, gave the children titles but no power. And so Eleanor, kind of to keep busy and to kind of teach her sons and probably those around her good things, she held court to talk and to listen and entertain people, and had good stories to be, kind of show good examples of what good people are. And so that's why it's most civilized place in Europe. Okay. All right. I think we are super close to being almost done, right? Yep. Just got about 2 more pages. Okay, so royal rivals. All right. The murder of Thomas Becket was a turning point in Henry's second rule over England, and this is what we read last time in chapter 15. Many powerful nobles in England blamed Henry for Becket's murder. Eleanor saw an opportunity and encouraged her son to take advantage of the king's new weakness by rebelling against him. With their mother's help, the sons were able to get the support of several powerful nobles. So a lot of nobles weren't pleased with King Henry, and how he said these words, and they think that he was responsible for Thomas Becket's murder, right? Because he said words, his knights took those words to heart, and they were hot-headed and wanted to, do something, and so they murdered Thomas Becket. So now there's these nobles that aren't happy with King Henry. So Eleanor is saying, hey, let's capitalize, let's take advantage of King Henry's disliked moment, right, where not a lot of nobles are liking him, and let's capitalize, let's take advantage. And the sons were able to get some powerful nobles to be on their side. So remember, it was King Henry who had just recently stripped them of their power. The sons, with the help of certain nobles, did lead a rebellion against their father, but Henry was still a masterful warrior. Henry put down the rebellion and placed Eleanor under house arrest, making her a prisoner in one of his castles. Oh no, it seemed like the plan didn't work. There she stayed until his death some 15 years later. Wow. So when she was between 40 and 50, for 15 years, she was in prison, house arrest in one of the castles. Okay. And then King Richard II. So when Eleanor is about 40 to 50 years old, King Henry died. And let's learn about what happened when King Henry died. So when Henry died, their eldest son, Richard, became king. Richard immediately had his mother freed. The new king was very close to his mother. Eleanor saw many of the same qualities in Richard that she had first admired in Henry. He was dashing, handsome, adventurous, and energetic. Richard would have been a great king except for one problem. He did not have his father's gift of governing. Okay, let's pause really quick and look at this picture. Richard I led thousands of soldiers in what is known as the Third Crusade. The Crusades were attempts by Europeans to reclaim the Holy Land from Muslim control. So Israel. So King Richard had a lot of good qualities, but a big part of being a king is governing, right? To keep law and order in the land. And so not having that ability to govern could lead to a lot of problems and maybe even his downfall. So during his 10 years as king, Richard the Lionhearted, as he was called, hardly set foot in England. He was too busy leading crusades overseas. And we just kind of talked about crusades, right? Crusade is religious wars during the Middle Ages in which Christians from Europe attempted to recover territory from Muslims in the Middle East. And that's where Israel is, in the Middle East. So at one point, he was taken prisoner and held for ransom. Yeah, that's our second to last vocabulary word. A ransom is a payment for the release of a prisoner. So they'll hold the prisoner. So if I held someone as prisoner and I'm asking for ransom, so you either give me money or give me what I want, and then I'll give this prisoner back to you. So he was held for a ransom. So Eleanor raised the money to get him released. All right, and this is a picture of some of the crusaders, right? Crusaders traveled to the Middle East and to North Africa. These wars began in 638 when Arab armies captured Jerusalem. Here's the Kingdom of Jerusalem. Down here's Egypt. Okay. All right. So if the king was away so much, who ruled England while he was gone? His younger brother John and his mother, Queen Eleanor, that's who. So King Richard was out doing these crusades, and even while he was captured, his younger brother John and his mother Eleanor kind of governed and helped rule England while he was away. So John was not as popular as Richard, but his mother was. Just as her husband. Oh, nice. Hey, Josh, how's it going? Glad you're here. Thanks for coming in. We're almost done. So we can kind of chat a little bit if you want to after this, but let's finish this up really quick, and you can rewatch the beginning once we finish. So just as her husband Henry II had done, she worked on solving problems in England. She introduced standard coins and a system of weights and measures, making it easier to conduct business, right? Unifying things to make things easier is a very smart thing. We learned about that in the dynasties of China as well, kind of unifying the language and unifying the money system to make trade and business a lot simpler. So she also did away with a number of unfair laws. These reforms made her popular with her subjects. So a reform is an improvement. So she made improvements to the unfair laws, probably made them more fair or got rid of them. And this made people around her very pleased with her. When Richard was killed during one of his adventures, Eleanor was heartbroken. Oh no, King Richard died. So John became the King of England. By this time, Eleanor was nearly 80. She retired to a convent, right, where nuns live, kind of like a monastery for monks, where she died at the age of 82. And then let's look at this. The statue of Queen Eleanor on her tomb shows her holding a book. This emphasizes just how unusual a woman she was for her time, right? Because she was more educated. She was kind of had the things that men had, but very few women had at that time. Okay, I'm going to scroll back up to the big question, and let's review this, right? So why do we think the author describes Eleanor as extraordinary? So some key points is to think about women in that time. What made her different from other women in that time? Think about her education or her power. Who was she married to? What could she do? For example, she could read and write. There's a few other things that she could do just as well as the men. And then we just learned King Richard was out doing crusades. So who was running the government during that time? And that kind of is an unusual thing for a woman to do, right? And while she did that, she did a lot of good things or reforms. And what are some of the reforms that she did while she was governing England? And that will be a few tips and keys to help you answer the big question. And that is it, guys. That is a lesson for chapter 16. Chapter 17 is already recorded, so it should be uploaded soon. So if you want to get ahead, you can watch that. And then I will see you guys in the either office hours on Thursday or the next lesson. Remember, we only have 3 weeks left of class before Christmas break. It's pretty crazy, right? 3 weeks. So please be disciplined. Set aside those things that are distracting you from not getting your schoolwork done. If you just work really hard for 3 weeks, then you can enjoy an awesome Christmas break and not worry about passing your classes because you already know you did everything that you needed to do, and not worry about not passing 4th grade. Okay. So that is it. Yeah, it's good to see you, Josh. Thanks for coming in. Do you have any questions for me, buddy, before we end this stream? Good to have you here. No worries. I think you're the only one that joined, which is awesome. Some kids are probably still at school, and I can also understand it's a little tough to get back into the groove of things after Thanksgiving break, but let's finish this quarter strong. These 3 weeks are going to go by very fast. But yeah, let me know if you have any questions, Josh. Yeah, you have a question? What do you got for me? I don't have a whole lot of time, Josh, but if you have a question, I can answer really quick. I got to meet with a student for math. But if you can just let me know your question, I can help you, and then I can get back to you. Or you can reach out to me through Canvas. Oh, nice. Well, thank you. I hope you have a great day as well. Thanks for coming in, Josh. Really appreciate it. Have a good day. Just work hard. Work hard each day. Don't get distracted. And then let's finish this quarter strong. Hey, guys, I will see you in the next lesson. You're awesome.